Well, hello everybody. It's an honor to speak with you once more today, and I'm sorry I can't be with you, but unfortunately, I'm at the COP26 in Glasgow, and hopefully you're making good progress where you are, but I hope that is the same for Glasgow because boy, do we need it. And you've inspired and provoked me last time I joined you in Berlin because this is really a diverse group that you've put together of entrepreneurs, of tech entrepreneurs that are really driving with passion the transformation to a green economy. And we all know that this will require radical partnership within a sector, across sectors, between sectors like business and finance, but most importantly, as well with civil society. I'd like to acknowledge, before I'll give you my talk, my friend and former Formula One world champion, Nico Rosberg, and the other entrepreneurs there, Marco Vogt and Sven Kruger, for what you guys have created. My full support. You're committed to giving green technology a larger platform and accelerating its adoption, and there could not be a more noble cause. I also want to give my congratulations to last night's Green Award winners. You're showing how it is possible to accelerate the transition to a net zero economy and at the same time build a sustainable world, a functioning economy, sustainable communities to prosper now and hopefully for generations to come. It's great to be celebrating these achievements, but it's equally important to look ahead to the next decade and see what we can do together. As we all know that this is the decade of action, and we absolutely need the best of all of us. We all know the challenges. Our global economic system is broken. We have discovered that you can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. And anything you can do infinitely is by definition unsustainable. This year, World Overshoot Day was July 29th, which is the day that we use up more resources than the world can replenish. In fact, every day after that, the simple way to put it is that we're stealing from future generations. We're living well beyond the planetary boundaries. And COVID is one of these signs of it. It has shown us the complexity of our systems, as well as its interrelationships, biodiversity, climate change, inequality, the racial dimensions, the economy, all connected. If anything, we've learned that we cannot have healthy people on an unhealthy planet. And unfortunately, time is running out. We have a hard time to see the exponential curves of many of these challenges that we have, like COVID or climate change. Last month, the IPCC confirmed once more that indeed we don't have until 2050, not even 2040. We need to manage all these challenges between now and 2030 at the latest. That is the real deadline for action. If we don't cut it within the next 10 years, our carbon emissions by 45%, it will be really impossible to keep us below the 1.5-degree warming. Unfortunately, the combined submissions from all the countries that we've seen so far point more to a 16% increase in emissions in the next 10 years than a 45% reduction. So indeed, in Glasgow or where you are with technology, etc., we have our jobs cut out. More than ever, I believe, especially given the difficult situations that governments find themselves in, where multilateralism isn't quite functioning the way we have designed it, we need business to step up to the plate and fill that void. After all, business cannot succeed in societies that fail, nor do I believe that they can be bystanders in a system that gives them life in the first place. And yes, whilst we are all moving, we're not moving at the speed and scale needed. We need more of our industry leaders driving the tipping points in their specific sectors, and by doing so, giving our politicians the confidence to put bolder and more ambitious targets out there. There is very much that we're indeed trying to do publicly, but more importantly, what we're also trying to do behind the scenes in COP26 here in Glasgow to unlock this potential and to give these politicians more courage. Interestingly, many CEOs now know why we need to take action. They, in fact, every day see the consequences of climate change into their business models. They have the financial market increasingly breathing in their necks, and if it's not them, it will be their employees, demanding that companies move increasingly to more responsible business models. And the ones that do, the ones that take responsibility of their impacts, the ones that try to decarbonize their value chain, are actually almost the better for it, increasingly showing that we can overcome these trade-offs of climate change and economic growth, or profits and purpose. They very well go together. If anything, one enhances the other. Study after study, in fact, has shown now that the multi-stakeholder, longer-term business models with purpose and sustainability at the core of the strategies is actually the desired way going forward. And these companies that do this outperform their peers quite significantly, but I believe even more so since COVID. Now, there are some trends in our favor. The first one is technology, one that you're very familiar with. I believe it is mostly on our side. We always underestimate how fast technology or the speed of technology adoption is actually going. We've seen remarkable advancements in green energy, but also in the areas of food or mobility and many other sectors. In fact, over the last 10 years, the cost of solar or wind power has plummeted by 90% or more, and is in many cases now cheaper than fossil fuel. Renewables are now on average, I think in 60% of the world's countries, the desired form of energy. And it's not surprising that we are significantly investing more in capacity building around that. And it's not surprising either that most of the job creation is actually in that area. Now, not only is technology helping us, but I think the younger generation is increasingly speaking out as well and driving that change, and we should give them credit. The millennials or the Gen Zs are demanding that companies change, and frankly, they either say to companies, opt in and drive these changes and be part of it, or we are opting out. And perhaps the most encouraging in all of this, contrary to what we would have expected when COVID started, when most of the people were very skeptical about ESG and rightly proclaimed that ESG would now be dead and that most of the companies would go back to cost cutting and short-termism, the opposite is actually true. Since COVID, we've seen an explosion in ESG, environmental, socials, and governance. We now have about over $100 trillion in the financial market of money that actually has committed itself to the net zero goals. That's about 50% of the global capital in this world. And ESG is growing fast. We're estimating that by 2025, about $50 trillion of money under management will apply one sort or another of ESG principles. So we're seeing the momentum, we're seeing the commitment from more and more actors. And we could not have thought about that a few years ago. Yet, what we're seeing is, once more, not enough. We need to step up. And business increasingly, as I said, has to lead. And many business leaders struggle with that. They don't know how to do it, or they can't do it alone. Some of these problems are bigger than any of these companies can solve. Deforestation, plastics in the oceans, decarbonize your value chain, just to name a few of them. So this is why we started the book Net Positive, How Courageous Companies Thrive by Giving More Than They Take. I wrote it with my good friend Andrew Winson, who also has written The Big Pivot and From Green to Gold, and is a leading thinker in the US in the area of sustainability. And what is very clear is that we cannot get the systems changes that we need without the organizational changes that we're after. But we cannot have the organizational changes either if we don't change ourselves, if we don't start with the individual change. This is a transformation that is as much a leadership transformation as it is a systems transformation. Embedding sustainability now at the heart of your corporate strategies, I believe, is a precondition for any successful company. And we indeed see that leading companies go beyond that. And they're becoming actually more and more systems actors, using their influence, their power, their skill to transition systems to be more sustainable. As I mentioned, World Overshoot Day was July 29th this year. Many companies are still in the CSR mode, or corporate social responsibility, trying to be less bad. Frankly, I've never personally understood that, but I think less bad might be better than bad, but it's still not good. A simple analogy would be if you were a murderer and you killed 10 people, and now you decide to only kill 5 people, does that make you a better murderer? I don't think so. So more and more companies understand that CSR might not be actually positioning them well for the future anymore. So they say, okay, I'm going to be sustainable. But sustainable is about neither being good nor bad. An applaudable position to be in for many companies. But when we are overshooting these boundaries already, overshooting and getting close to these negative feedback loops, then even being not good or not bad is simply not sufficient anymore. We need to start thinking increasingly about being regenerative, restorative, restarting the different things that we can do. And the companies that think in this repairing, restoring, regenerative mindset, what we call the net positive mindset, are positioning themselves very well for the future. And this is what our book is all about. It talks about companies profiting not from creating the world's problems, but from actually solving the world's problems. It asks a very simple question. Is your business, is the world better off because your company is in it? It starts with taking full responsibility for your social and environmental impacts, well beyond scope 1 and 2, intended or not. Most companies think that by staying in scope 1 or 2 because it's under their control and they've outsourced their value chain, they can also outsource their responsibilities. That is not the case anymore. If you're in the food business, you have to deal with the issues of food waste or deforestation or obesity. And if you're in the tech business, you have to deal with the issues of democracy undermining on your platforms or hate speech or many of the other things. Net positive companies also understand that it is about serving all of your stakeholders, including your staff, your customers, your suppliers, and yes, also the next generation and the planet itself, with the aim of, by doing so, driving the longer term value creation that is also benefiting our shareholders. And there's increasing evidence that this is actually happening. It is about embracing the deep partnerships that we need, including partnerships with governments, sometimes your critics, your competitors, because on these issues of humanity, if you want to, like climate change, I personally believe that we should not compete. And yes, it is also about dealing with the tougher challenges. We call that in our book the elephants in the room. How to deal with corruption, tax, money in politics, trade associations, advocating different things than you stand for, human rights. Ultimately, it is the consistency of action in all what you do that makes you a net positive company. So how do you transform your culture? How do you engage your employees? How do you drive the purpose deeper in the organization? Are all the elements that we take you through in this very practical book, discussing the steps not only from Unilever's experience, but also from the best-in-class companies in the world. It isn't an easy journey. I certainly don't pretend that Unilever was perfect. In fact, nobody is perfect. But it is now the only path forward, I believe, to stay relevant and have a successful future. And anybody that wants to deny that or just simply discharge these issues to others, I think, is heading for the graveyard of dinosaurs. So it's not surprising that increasingly you see companies making these net positive commitments. Walmart making commitments to restore land, protect oceans. Microsoft recapturing carbon, going back to 1975 when they actually started the company. Companies like IKEA already giving more energy back to the grid than they use it themselves. Companies like Patagonia using the US tax break to take all that money and invest it in protecting nature. All signs of companies increasingly starting to think net positive. But ultimately, once more, it comes down to leadership. We have an abundance of funds and money. We certainly have a lot of the technologies to our disponibility. And frankly, never ever have we been so forewarned about what is going to happen and so forearmed with tools to do something about it. And yet collectively, we're falling short. Collectively, we're not showing this courageous leadership that is needed. So the human transformation is, as we too easily forget, the roots once more of the systems transformation that is needed. And we're spending a fair amount of time in the book explaining what that takes. You cannot be a sustainable company if you're not sustainable yourself. You cannot be a purpose-driven company if you're not a purposeful leader itself. I'd like to quote Rumi, who was the 13th century Iranian poet, who said it very well when he said that yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world, but today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. I believe that that is the spirit of Net Positive. I hope you enjoy the reading, working on both your personal, your organization, and your systems level changes that you need, and that the book provides you some concrete guidance, but above all, some hope on how to do this. Hope that is definitely needed to drive the change. You'll never drive change with fear, but also hope that is merited. Because again, of the work that you're doing with technology, the younger generations being passionate on being more purpose-driven, the financial market getting increasingly more involved, and yes, having come to a point where the cost of not acting, as we've seen with COVID, is now significantly higher than the cost of acting. Not surprisingly, this is probably the biggest opportunity that mankind has in this century. You at the Green Festival are very well placed to be a key partner in this journey. In fact, you're absolutely needed to set the trends, and I count on your full support. Enjoy your getting together, and I hope you have fruitful discussions, but above all, the actions that the world is waiting for. Thank you for the opportunity, and hope to see you soon in person. Thank you very much.